All right, guys, thank you. I wrote these as a series of tributes to a special gentleman who's going to be joining us at dinner tonight. A guy named Scott Stornetta will be joining us. Scott and Stuart are the fathers of the proto-blockchain, referenced 3 times in the Bitcoin white paper. So if you didn't sign up, think about that again, because Scott will be there. So the jokes were for him, but I have been speaking on this topic for, again, over 20 years to the profession. And again, we have some wonderful things that are now pushing us forward on this. Here is my proposal to you that the audit information supply chain needs to figure out enterprise key management approaches. We have seen digital signatures and keys used in enterprise environments for many ways. PKI use in enterprise is not new, but the use of PKI so closely tied to enterprise assets in our world of tracking them is new. The mismanagement of keys right now is proving to result in the loss of millions and millions of dollars and or other currencies. And so our world of controls, our world of audit are going to have to consider these issues. So let's talk about keys and the accounting profession. Let's talk about digital signatures and the accounting profession. People have been saying that the accounting professionals need to understand this for a very, very long time. One of the challenges is that when the World Wide Web came out, there was no identity model. There was no security model built into websites. There was no way to identify what is authoritative, what's not authoritative, where the walls, the beginnings, and the ends are. There is no information validation as part of the World Wide Web. So as people were starting to say, let's put financial statements and other information up on the web, and Glenn and many people in the room, having been part of some great papers that came from the IFRS Foundation and from the ISB and from the FASB, the great minds got together and they said, we need to put up the white flag immediately. We need to let people know that CPAs are not responsible for electronic information. We don't know where the barriers are. You may see a financial statement, it may have a hyperlink, you may go outside. We need to make sure people understand that auditors aren't required under Section 550 to read information contained on the electronic site, whether it's the Edgar system or a corporate bulletin board system or anything else. They are not responsible for considering the consistency of the information. That is just information. It is not a document. And again, you can go back to 1997 when that white flag went up. So a bunch of us said, well, we think that XML and XBRL can be part of that very explicit, let's sign the information, let's let you know what is covered, what's not covered, how the auditor's opinions work. And starting around May 2001, we had meetings with the Assurance Services Executive Committee, that Miklos mentions, the Canadian counterpart, the Assurance Service Development Board. And a few of us said, we're moving into a new, far more data-centric environment. The profession needs to be considering how we deal with authentication, authorization. We need to bring people together. We need to figure out how we can do the flow of information, the flow of trust from first business event or transaction off then report. So the transactions that we think of in blockchain today, protecting the information at the end of it, how do we make this happen? And so the discussions began. And again, that was 2001. The great news is that in the last year or so, the global Global Legal Entity Identifier Foundation, GLEAF, in their financial statement incorporated digital signatures that had the authority and what's covered by the auditor and what's covered by management. And they actually showed this in action some 20 years later. So wonderful that this has been happening, wonderful that people are thinking about it. But again, we made presentations to the Assurance Service Executive Committee, the IT Executive Committee. We worked with the World Wide Web Consortium to try and come up with the business requirements of transactions down to the business reporting supply chain to say, how can we have digital signatures? How can we have keys? How can we have authorization? How can we protect people from beginning to end? And again, it was a problem. We did not respond. We didn't have an awful lot of movement to ensure accountability from first business event or transaction. through to the end report. And that meant as we moved to this new environment that we call blockchain or distributed ledger technologies, we didn't have what we could then fall back on. And again, part of it was that there was no built-in identity model for the web. We have now reached a stage where the World Wide Web Consortium recently came out with their decentralized identities, the DID standard. And you know the name Sir Tim Berners-Lee, the guy who's sort of the founder of HTML and the web. He worked with a gentleman that I worked with some 20 years ago named Philip Hallam Baker. And he said to him 20 years ago, Phil, you need to come up with a security model for the web. And so I think it was around 5 years ago, Philip first started socializing what he called his mathematical mesh, which again, the use of keys to really have an identity model and work that through the website. So let's take all this as a little bit of a backgrounder that brings us to where we are right now.